4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Shalom, good afternoon from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State in 1981, now celebrating our 42nd year. Today is Monday, August 7th, 2023 in the Gregorian calendar, and it is the 20th day of the 5th Israelite Hebrew month of Av in the Hebrew Israelite calendar, year 5783. Actually, in a few weeks, we have year 5784. This is the first year of our 7-year Shemitah sabbatical, 7-year cycles. This is year 1 of the 7-year cycle. And I think around September 15th, we're moving into year 2. And we live in very prophetic times, as anyone can see, whether you're religious or not. It would seem that way to me. Okay, so welcome to episode 16 of our monthly Root and Branch Association Ancient Roots Mothering Roots, Nettles and Sage seminars. The co-chairwomen of the seminar are, in alphabetical order, Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin of the Lower Galilee here in the land of Israel, Mrs. Chava Dagan of the Northern Negev here in the land of Israel, and Mrs. Gilla Weiss of Florida, a free state in the United States of America. Notice because of all these issues, these crazy issues of identity and weird surgeries and terrible things being done to children, I'm changing for all our about over 20 monthly seminars and 2 weekly seminars. I no longer use the term chair. It's chairman or chairwoman. I'm not aware of anyone I work with who has another status. If they do, they can let me know. But we have 3 chairwomen of this seminar, and I'm so glad we have real women chairing a real program for real people, including people who, and the Talmud describes all these different genetic strange situations, people who are neither this nor that through no fault of their own. That's not something you have to dance an Irish jig about, but everyone has to be accepted the way, with whatever genetic package we were given by the Creator, until Mashiach arrives and there's no more sickness, aging, and death. But that didn't happen yet, so we'll have to do the best we can. Now, on with the show. And let me do my rainmaking bit to start off. Please support the work of Gilla, Chava, and Rivkah. You'll see below their websites. There's all sorts of ways you can support their work there. And please support yours truly's work to build our Hebrew Bible-based 5th Israelite monarchy broadcasting network from Jerusalem, Israel, to honor the God-land Torah and people of Israel and all humanity. For the 5th Israelite monarchy, please see the biblical book of Daniel, chapter 2, verse 44. And we welcome our guests. One I don't know from where, and the other I do know is from Paris, France. Okay, ladies, it's all yours.
Before Chava jumps in, I just want to do a little rainmaking bit myself. We have Herbal First Aid 2 coming up. It's our second Herbal First Aid course from the 3 of us from Ancient Roots Mothering. Our first one was a smashing success, and you want more, and we're bringing it to you. So that course begins this Wednesday, August 9th. It's also a month-long course. And sign up today. Time's running low to jump on the bandwagon for this course. Okay.
Thank you. So, okay, welcome to our show. This is going to be a fun one. It's going to be an interesting one. It's going to go a little deeper than maybe we're used to, or maybe not. We kind of touch on everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a question in the beginning and then again at the end. So hold on to the question, sit with it during the show, and see how it shifts, see how it might affect you, what we're bringing in, and how we're going to touch on it from so many different angles, and see how you feel. And then in the end, come up with an answer. So the question would be, what does religion mean to you? Okay, so we're going to take this and it's going to go deeper than religion. Judaism, whatever that might come forth for you. Because this subject has become so narrow and narrow-minded in many places, but it truly is very broad, very deep, very spiritual, while being very connected to the physical material world that we're living in. So just to give some perspective, Rivkah, you want to take it from there?
Well, what does religion mean to you? Is Judaism a religion? I'm going to say no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a religion. But we've certainly been culturally appropriated by other religions who've stolen our ancestral wisdom, stolen our books, stolen our knowledge, and have added on to it or changed it. And they've developed a concept of religion that has absolutely nothing to do with us, much like these other books they've changed and added on to what we have. Judaism is a indigenous people, a tribe, a nation. I like to explain it as, like Native Americans. So that's something that's much more easy for people to understand. Native Americans, they're kind of a native people, indigenous to North America. And I ask people, name me the religion of the Cherokee, Seminole, on and on and on. One religion, any religion. And no one has ever been able to name me a religion so far. However, everybody knows that Native Americans have a deep, rich spiritual practice and a way of life that respects both Creator, the natural world, our ancestors, our elders, each other, the animals, everything in the natural world. I want to clarify that. That's plants, animals, human beings, bodies of water, rocks, inanimate objects. Just has a basic respect for the divine spark in everything, if you will. And there's no religion. We don't have a religion either. We have a spiritual practice, and our spiritual practice is our way of life. It's understanding that there's a God above that I like to call Creator Spirit, and that there's a divine spark in everything, like we just mentioned. This is actually pretty normal for indigenous cultures to have this kind of understanding, this way of life, this spiritual way of life. It's very integrated into how we live. And that's who we are. That's what we do. Why did our Creator Spirit give us this practice, this spiritual practice? I guess I should add some other things about indigenous cultures too, just to clarify the point, right? So indigenous cultures like the Cherokee or the Seminole or, any other indigenous cultures from anywhere around the world that you can imagine, they have a language. We also have a language, it's Hebrew. They have a culture with all sorts of theater and poetry and writings and wisdom and all of these things. We have all of those things. They are, many of them, codified, even when some of them weren't supposed to be, like our Midrash, like our oral Torah. Okay, things that are passed down throughout the generations, mouth to ear, from the elder generations down. That's what our Midrash and our oral Torah was all about. We have ways of eating. There are certain foods we can eat or we can't eat. There's certain ways we prepare foods. It's something very uniquely Jewish. And just like other cultures have very unique practices with food, so do we. So yes, we are a people, we're a nation, we happen to have a spiritual practice. And much like the Native Americans who were culturally appropriated by Christianity, even when some of these Native Americans converted to Christianity, they still are Native American. That doesn't change. They didn't give that up. They're a Native American who's practicing the religion of Christianity. And just like Jews who decide not to practice the Jewish spiritual practices, they are still Jews who just don't keep the spiritual practices of our people, but they're still Jews. So clearly we're not a religion, because if you are, say, a Christian or a Muslim and you don't believe those certain tenets of faith about who Jesus is or who Muhammad is or anything like that, you are no longer a Christian or Muslim. You have to hold on to those tenets of faith as your belief system. That's the most important thing. And of course, here it's one of the myriad things that our people have. So why did we receive a spiritual practice from our Creator? Why did we receive a spiritual practice from our ancestors? Why did we receive these oral laws, these oral traditions that were passed down for thousands of years? Why was it so important to our ancestors to pass these things down? And the reason why is because it's supposed to keep us rooted together as a nation, rooted to ourselves, to our true selves as Jews, as an indigenous people in a topsy-turvy, upside-down world. So that even in times where there's, anything can change, anything's woo, we still know who we are. We still keep our spiritual practices, our language practices, our food practices, our identity, our nationhood, our connection with the land of Israel, which is our homeland, and so on and so forth. So maybe we'll take a break here and kind of bounce some of those ideas around. Gilla and Chava, maybe there's something you want to add to that?
So, I listen to everything you say and it resonates so deeply. And I have all these questions bouncing about. And the first question is, how did we get to where we are as communities? And don't want to say as a people, but we each reside in community. From the small to the larger, it expands out. And essentially, a lot of our practices today are community-based or community standards that we adhere to in the name of religion, but essentially it doesn't have anything to do with connecting to the divine source. Our practices, as are passed down through the generations and in our Torah, give us ways to connect. All our mitzvot, our commandments, are essentially ways that we can connect to each other, to our Creator, God, and to connect to the universe, to the world. And we, as a people, through the generations and today, as we get further and further away from this true connection, we have lost our connection. We are out of touch. We got to a point where as a people, we are out of touch. We are out of touch with ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our spirit. We are out of touch with each other. We are out of touch with nature. Our practices that have been passed down through the generations, all our holidays are nature-based. They revolve around the seasons. They revolve around the moon, our cycle. 3 of us women sit here in front of you, and we all share that as women, and a gift from our Creator to connect to the cycles of the moon, to connect to the cycles of our bodies, unique to us as women. No other sex, the male, does not have our cycles. So as women and mothers, we have this unique opportunity and gift to connect to ourselves, our bodies, nature, the cycles, the seasons, and to our Creator God. And when we take a moment to stop and breathe and connect to something like this, which is huge, we connect to God. We connect to the Creator and to each other. We, as women today, have been sold we've been sold a lemon. We've been told feminism. And we all strive to be empowered as women who have suffered throughout the ages. Feminism, we're like, yes, we want to be empowered. But without realizing our unique feminism has been stolen from us, taken, and is being canceled as we speak. So we've been told birth control, the golden calf. However, yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes thought. Yes, it takes planning. It takes stopping and stepping off to connect to our cycles, for one. You know, there are so many ways that we can regain that touch and connection and understand the gift of our ancient heritage, ancestral heritage that has been passed down, what a gift it is, and how spiritually empowering it truly is when we connect. Recently, there was a study that showed that when we toil in the soil, physically, as in gardening, that it's an antidepressant. The smell of the mycobacterium is antidepressive, is uplifting. How more so when we toil in the soil spiritually? Or how about both? How about putting our hands in the earth? We are so out of touch and so far removed. Most gardeners wear gloves. Take off your gloves. Be raw, be real, be true. Put your hands in the earth. Take off your shoes. Feel that energy from our Creator come into our bodies and lift our spirit. Take off your shoes every day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So these are just some things that I'm thinking of as you both are speaking. Ah, there we go. Thank you, Rivkah. Exactly. So simple. So simple. And that's really what it's about. Today, as people, we're seeking our rabbis, we're seeking our gurus. We follow this one. When we're not fulfilled, we follow that one. We're continually following. We're seeking healing from the outside. We are running to practitioners. This one, that one, no, this one. No, this one is better. No, this one is higher esteem. No, this one learned from that one. Hashem gave us, God, the Creator gave us it all inside. Yes, we need help. Yes, we need sisters, mothers, brothers, friends, healers. But until we get back in touch with ourselves and our Creator, we can run to every single therapist, healer, gardener, you name it. And we're essentially going to have to come home to ourselves and to God.
So,
Chava.
well, before, just to recap, so I made the connection clear.
Yeah.
We're not a religion. We're an indigenous people. And Creator Spirit wants us to connect to the natural world that Creator created. And the natural world involves things like the soil, which is actually good for us and can remove depression from us. And Creator Spirit wants us to connect to the cycles of the earth, which is now kind of trendy, called eating locally or eating seasonally or this kind of thing. But those are the rhythms Creator created for us so that we can be the most healthy and body, mind, and spirit. However, what you're saying, Gilla, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that we've been totally disconnected from the natural world and the natural course of things, so that I hope Chava can talk about this here, an example of what she's seen. What happens when precious Jewish neshamot and indigenous people of the land of Israel, who were given thousands of years long ancestral wisdom from every generation passed down to let us know how to interact with the natural world, with the earth and the plants and the animals and all of that, because we're supposed to live in harmony and in divine beauty and balance with those things. What happens when these souls come and encounter the dirt?
Thank you, Rivkah.
So I work at a tourist farm, and I see multiple times, almost every day during the week, these groups that come in from the States, from all over the place, mostly from America, these religious communities, summer camps, you name it, little schools, whatever. And these girls are being chaperoned by a rabbi, and they're completely dressed the way they're expected to be dressed. They say the brachot before trying any of the foods that we have at the farm. They do everything that they were taught and told to do. However, they freak out about any dirt on anything, or that dirt got on their hands or on their precious Nike shoes or whatever it happens to be. And they have been led many times. I've met so many groups, and it breaks my heart. The first time I heard it, I almost fainted. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but now I've heard it so many times. It's just heartbreaking. They go to a museum in Jerusalem, again, chaperoned by their rabbi. There's a corner set up there. Maybe many of you have seen this. There's a corner set up where they are feeding locusts to the tourists that come by. And these girls are literally being led over by their rabbi, told that there is a pasuk somewhere that makes it kosher for them to eat these locusts. Again, don't touch the dirt, freak out, all of these things about nature, but then they're doing this. And they actually, the rabbi helps them, and everybody along the way shows them how to peel off the wings and snap off the head and go ahead and pop it in their mouths. And I asked them, girls, why are you doing this? Aren't you learning and reading the Torah and using your head and thinking of our kashrut laws? And they say, oh, no, the rabbi says it's okay. And so that's the end of the question. Well, wait a minute. These are young women that will grow up to be mothers one day. They are supposedly religious, whatever that means, shomer, right, on the laws of kashrut and the house and raising children and being a wife and doing all the things that she's supposed to do. This is why they're going to these special schools. And yet, from the side, the evil is slipping in and telling them it's perfectly okay. It's even kosher with the stamp of approval. Please go ahead, enjoy. Taught to critique, to criticize, to use their heads. And then they come to the farm after these trips and they tell me all the stories, and I can't believe what I'm hearing. And then they freak out about nature all around them. They are scared of the nature that is growing green all around them. So it's frustrating because I know that they're trying their best and they think that they're doing the right thing because all of their elders are telling them this is correct. This is how we deal with God's world. But it looks so wrong to me, and it feels so wrong when I hear these words. It feels wrong, and I want them to feel that. So I kind of gently ask them these questions, like I just said, and I don't really get much of a response. I'm hoping that maybe in the future one day they'll think twice about me questioning these practices. But I really try when they're on the farm to get them to just loosen up. The dirt is from God, you guys. It was created, this whole world, for us, for our medicine, for our food. Let's enjoy it and stop freaking out about what you're about to touch and to do and to connect with again. Do you remember who God is? Do you remember that we were put here for a reason, and to connect and to eat the leaves and the flowers and the herbs and everything that he has given us? So this is something that I deal with all the time, daily. I hope one day one of these rabbis or somebody will wake up. I really do. But this is just a big example of being totally disconnected. You do everything you are told to do and taught, the right brachot and the right way to dress and the right way to act among each other. But where's the spiritual practice of this? Where's the true connection to your creator?
Yeah, you say these brachot, but you don't even think about it. You don't even think about what they mean. It's just rote. Am I pronouncing it perfect in every vowel? And that's great. However, it's like a body without a soul. And so, the idea that precious Jewish neshama, I mean, Hashem gave us everything to live in harmony with the natural earth. You name the chag. Give me any chag. Chanukah comes when the sun is at its lowest point, where the days are the shortest, and then it begins to turn around. And we've got the candles lighting the way, lighting it up, saying it's going to be okay. We see that it's getting darker, darker, and darker, but don't worry. The light is actually getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And there were so many machlochet about how to light the fires on Hanukkah. When this was decided by our elders, no, we want the light to increase. We don't want to take away a candle. We don't want to do this the other way because the sun is decreasing. We want to say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's almost that kind of magic, really, that symbolic magic of you bringing the light and saying, we know the light's coming. So we're pushing it, just like another holiday, Sukkot. You're changing your brachot. You're praying for rain. And there are certain times where you have to wait until after the Chag so that everyone can get home first before you do the full prayers for the rain, right? Because we believe that by us praying for it, we are triggering on a spiritual level the rhythms of God. We're participating with Creator in the creation. And we see that over and over with Brit Milah. Why do we have Brit Milah? Because we're supposed to participate with Hashem in creation. Let's take away Brit Milah. Let's just look at creation. How is a baby human created? They don't grow from the ground. They're not in a Cabbage Patch doll growing from a cabbage plant. They don't come in with the eagles and the storks and whatever, right? Tachlis, really, how is a human baby born? Mother and father come together and partner with divine spirit that we can't even understand, with creator spirit. And through these magical forces that are beyond us, and also are coming together, we can create a baby. If we don't come together, we are not creating a baby. Now, you may say, science has found ways to replicate things and clone things. No, that's not a baby. I don't know what that is. It's a clone of something. It's something, I don't know what that is. It is a creation, but it is not God's creation. A lot of times I get the excuse, well, Hashem gave us medicine and this and that, so we could, whatever. Hashem also gave us free will, and we have made a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of things that we have done, a lot of wars, a lot of death, a lot of destruction that our creator does not want from us. So that isn't going to cut it for me. The fact that somebody comes, our people for millennia have been drinking the milk of sheep, of goats, of cows. And then they would come to your farm, Chava, and ask, I don't think you mentioned it here, but you've told me before, ask if that milk is pasteurized. Wait a second. This is how we drank milk. And in fact, pasteurization creates problems in our milk. We're not getting a pure product anymore. There's a different effect on our body when we drink pasteurized versus natural milk from any animal. And that's outside of the scope of this lecture right here. If you guys want to go into it, fine, but people can really look that up and see there are certain properties healing properties, both internally and topically, of animal milk that are not available in the pasteurized product. And that's scientifically proven. I put it in quotes because I don't really know how much that matters to me, but to some people that does matter. But it is scientifically proven. There's been scientific studies to prove what I just said, and they're available, and you can look that up. So the dirt has healing properties. We've heard a lot about CO2. It's an enemy. Carbon emissions. Carbon is so bad. No, it's not. Carbon is a building block of all life. It is the air that the plants breathe. It is the air that the plants breathe. And if the plants don't have that air to breathe, they cannot exhale oxygen, which is actually the air we breathe. We live in a symbiotic relationship with the natural world. Now, hang on. How do I know this? How else do I know this? Well, our creator told us that it's forbidden for us to cloister ourselves off into a monastery, like the Buddhists do, for example, or nuns. It's completely forbidden in our spiritual practice to live outside of the natural world. We must live in the natural world. We can't be too spiritual, meaning to seclude ourselves away from the world. And you can go look in our, liturgy, in our ancestral wisdom. Over and over and over, this subject is dealt with, how we have to live in the natural world. We cannot separate ourselves from the natural world. And yet, when we have precious Jewish neshamot asking about pasteurization and yuck dirt, that's someone who's not living in the natural world. Go ahead.
The vaccines, they won't touch the animals unless they've been vaccinated.
There you go. Have these animals been vaccinated? Have these animals been vaccinated? I'm not going to make a commentary on vaccines today. What I am going to say is that I and Ancient Roots Israel respects medical autonomy and every person's right to do their own research and make their own choices. That being said, I can't ignore the fact that we were not created vaccinated with pharmaceutical drugs. We were created with natural antibodies that we acquire through things like breastfeeding, our mother's natural immunity that passes to us through our placentas when we're babies, through childhood acquisition of illness, or really acquisition at any time of illness. And we develop antibiotics to these things, and we become vaccinated, right? We become immune. So there are natural things. And then the question is, why would we want to change God's design, creator's design for vaccination into something else that is not as tried and true, hasn't been tested nearly as long, and wasn't divinely created? Those are all things we have to consider. So
I wouldn't even go, I'll let you speak in a second, Gilla. I wouldn't even go as far as to, what you do with your own body, all of that's fine. But to pet an animal, these are goats, sheep, pigeon, chickens. They don't bite. You don't have to worry about some disease that's going to come from a dirty mouth like a dog or something. These are animals that are grazers, and they just love to be pet because they're so soft and fluffy. And they will not touch them. I mean, that's how far removed. And therefore, they spent their whole lives not getting close to any kind of animal or plant life, and therefore completely cut off, in my view, from God's world that he created. So what did he create it all for? If we are, like you said, separate, we have now separated ourselves, put ourselves in these schoolrooms and buildings and surrounded ourselves with walls, and now we don't want to engage. And that is exactly what you're talking about. And this is what I'm seeing all the time. Go ahead, Gilla.
And this goes back to the broken chain again, because, a lot of this is also circumstantial due to wars. For example, we can go in our most modern history, let's go back to World War II. People were displaced, families were destroyed, eradicated, murdered. Elders were no longer, there were so many children who were orphans, who were shipped off to different places, lived with different families, and had to adjust and either forget or didn't remember even, and then we had that very, very quick era of worshiping science. Science is above everything, and modernization, clean, sterilization, and modern, and it's scientific, and everybody was, rushing forward in this progression to progress to where there was no goal. It was just get us out of where we are now and onto something else. And progression can be a phenomenal thing. Modernization, cleanliness can all be good things in the right place and in the right measure. However, what happened and what we are dealing with today is that everybody left spirit behind. Spirit, God, spiritualism, and our own spiritual beings. So Rivkah talked about cloning and scientific, creating of whatever. And I have no doubt that there are technologies around today that can create pretty much anything. However, you cannot create something with a spirit inside. Anything that is created like that is void of any spirit and spiritual being, any soul. It is void of soul. And so part of our broken chain is being so far removed from our ancestors and our elders and their ways. Going back 2 or 3 generations, depending how old you are, I remember sitting at the table on Friday nights listening to my father-in-law, who passed on a few years ago. He was a teen during the Holocaust and survived on the streets, hiding, and in the forests, living off. He said he would go around, as a teen, he was able to hide and disguise himself. And in the city that he lived, on the outskirts, he would pick up potato peels and, survive. So he used to tell us stories of where they lived, in the village they lived, and how they lived, and how his mother would pick wild weeds growing to make a green soup, and how they had chickens and they had geese, and they would take the wheat that they grew to the local mill. There was one person who did the milling of the wheat, and they lived a very communal life where they bartered with each other, where they were so connected to the land and the seasons and their spiritual practices, which were infused with the spiritual and the nature, a kind of infused daily ritual life that was so rich due to being in touch with all of these things. And yes, you can say, things happen, life happens. No matter how far removed we are, no matter our fear-based practices of trying to delay the inevitable, which is death or illness or life happening, life happens anyway. So we have an opportunity to embrace life as it is and to connect. We are spiritual beings that have been gifted to reincarnate on this earthly plane. We know that we will pass on. We have been here before. That is according to our ancient Indigenous Jewish heritage practices, Torah. So we are here to infuse spirit with the physical. That's part of our job, is to physically live. Like Rivkah said, we don't live in a monastery, even though sometimes we might wish that we could. Our job is a heavy burden. It's called the yoke. We carry this yoke, and this is what our practices ask of us. Live life fully. You have to live through the seasons. You have to toil the ground. You have to earn your living, and you have to birth your children physically. Yet you have this gift and opportunity and this job. That's what you're here for. This is your school, take your spiritual and infuse it with the physical. Take the physical and connect to the spiritual. That's our job here as humans on this earthly plane. No matter what religion or practice you practice, no matter where you come from, your ancestors walked outside. They were indigenous to a land somewhere on this beautiful earth, and they would walk outside. They would use herbs for medicine. They would bless the trees. They would bless the moon. They were grateful for the abundance. They would cry when there wasn't abundance. They knew when the seasons were off, and they knew how to survive and to pass it on. Through no fault of our own, we are here part of the broken chain. Our job is to connect to the ancient traditions and infuse it with spirit, be grateful for the physical, and share with everyone.
Christianity doesn't have the holidays around kind of the earth, the patterns of the earth. Again, I'm not Christian or whatever, but I want to draw that connection so that it's crystal clear. When you have an indigenous people, you're going to see all the holidays, all the feast days, all the celebration days connected to the natural rhythms of the earth, like Sukkot. I mean, we sleep outside for a week. How can you be afraid of dirt and bugs and whatever? That's what our creator said we need to do once a year for that week. We need to be sleeping outside in the natural elements and understand that our houses are an illusion. They actually separate us from what's real, which is the world God created, and saying, get out of the illusion. That's your protective little box, those four walls, but you need to get out there in it. Shavuot, connected to the harvest festival and also to the water, the way it was practiced. If you, again, maybe out of the scope of this lecture, but looking at how Shavuot was kept, how Sukkot was kept, how the water rituals at the Beit HaMikdash, all of these things for irrigating the land and for bringing in the first fruits. Besides Hanukkah, which I mentioned, it has to do with the rhythms of the sun and the seasons, and they were very specific to the land of Israel. For example, it's not winter solstice in the southern hemisphere of the world. Jews can live there, but the indigenous practices that we have are specific to our homeland, Israel, the land of Israel. And that's, I remember keeping Sukkot out in the snow in America, like having a Sukkot where it's snowing and going like, what is going on? And then it wasn't until I came to Israel where it's like, oh, that makes sense. There's no snow in Israel on Sukkot, zero. I don't think anywhere. Maybe somewhere in the Hermon, some bizarre season or something weird. But no, it's actually very pleasant on Sukkot. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's extra hot. And there's a bunch of mosquitoes. But this is how we know we're dealing with an indigenous practice. Now, I'm not knocking religion. I'm just clarifying that we are not a religion. So Christianity has got holidays that aren't connected to the earth. They're not connected to harvest. They're not connected to these things. If you go into maybe the pagan origins of Christian holidays, whatever, okay, maybe you'll find that stuff. But the reality is, on one hand, good on Christianity, you can keep those holidays anywhere in the world, in any hemisphere. It's not going to matter. Christmas is Christmas, whether it's a hot summer or a cold winter. It's the same, spiritual idea about their belief system, about their God. Okay, we don't have those things. We are an indigenous people. You can't take some kind of dogmatic theological ideology and say, if you don't believe in it, you're not a Jew. If you didn't know. So I guess want to reiterate that fact, because that brings us back to the question of really, what does religion mean to you? And then maybe the question we should be asking is, what does spiritual practice mean to you? Because I don't have a religion. I don't have religion at all. I went to speak at this conference. Thank you to Kiva and Wolf Harden for inviting me to speak at the Good Medicine Confluence in the Denver, Colorado area. I don't have religion. I talked about it there. I discussed it there. And I met a lot of people, a lot of American Jews who were talking about reform and conservative and reconstructionist and Orthodox and ultra Orthodox and all these things. And I cannot follow that. I don't understand what that is. I don't understand you. This is something that was developed in like Germany in the 1800s. I don't know what this is, but this is not Judaism. This is not who we are as Jews. We are an indigenous people, indigenous to the land of Israel, that have spiritual practices that our Creator Spirit gave to us and our ancestors gave to us, and didn't stop giving, and created a life for us where we should keep studying these ancestral practices over and over, because it's the most important thing we can possibly do to function in this world as an individual, as a family, as a community, and as a global citizen, is to be connected to the natural earth with all of these spiritual practices and this way of living. So Chava, maybe you want to wrap up from there.
I don't know how much, I don't know. Are we coming to an end? Is this the end already?
I think so. I think we're about like 8 minutes away from the end.
Well, you
So
can go on as long as you like, only have another program in 18 minutes. So go, it's not a problem.
Okay. Something that you brought up, I'm just going to mention this really quick before we close. Something that you brought up in one of the feeds this week, and someone mentioned the fact that, you know, when we go into masculinity, where is it going? The family unit, all of those things, men feel very lost because they are also out of touch, but it was a very purposeful agenda, you could call it. So everyone's living, or most people are living in apartments now. We have to pile them up. And it's not that we don't, if you come out to the Negev out here, it's empty. So it's not because we're running out of room. We as Jews must be separated from our land and our traditional farming, shepherding practices in order to get rid of the masculinity, get rid of the family, get rid of the man, the lead role, because now he's in an apartment and he doesn't really know where to put himself, which is very understandable. Now he sits in front of the TV or goes to work, and he is no longer able to pass on those traditions, skills, crafts, and inspiration to his children. So the land specifically in the Bible was divided into our nations. Dan, Naphtali, you go on and on. Each one group got land that he was then very connected to, that he did what he needed to do in terms of farming, shepherding, whatever. And that was when we were a great nation here. Now they're just names. Oh, in the Dan region, oh, in the show, you know, whatever. It's just names. Doesn't mean anything to anyone anymore, because now they're in apartment buildings or in very small little, and it's very out of touch, and it's sad. I believe that we will come back to, but I think people need to be aware of how important that connection was and why we were separated from it, why the men were taken off of our own land. Like you said, indigenous people, we were meant to be here, and everyone has their place. Not anymore.
And live in harmony with the land. One of the things that came up, so Chava's referencing a group that we're on, and you know, we started having this discussion about masculinity and femininity, but particularly masculinity. And one of the people, I think it was a man, but I'm not sure, who commented, was talking about how lack of land ownership in our land, in the land of Israel. So for those who don't know, in America, you buy the land and you build your house on it, or you know, set up your garden on it or farm on, whatever you do. But in Israel, you, except in a few places, you lease the land from the government for 99 years, which is done, I believe, in China and Russia, I think, as well. Just fun factoids. Connect your own dots. But that being said, this man, I believe, I don't know, he goes by his initials online, but he just kind of explained how this not being able to own the land emasculates men. And, you know, really, I was thinking about this. This was our rich, these were our riches. When we look at the crashing of the economy all around the world and how easily and really elegantly it's been deconstructed. And I think about the riches of our forefathers, like Yaakov. So his riches didn't come from fiat currency or credit cards or bank investments or gold versus silver versus Bitcoin versus, no. He was responsible for his own riches in animals, livestock, in farming. And when you're given a plot of land and you can sell what you produce from the land, and then you get enough money to buy some animals, and then your animals are breeding and you're raising them, and now you have milk and meat and eggs and work animals and watch dog or watch animals to protect you, protective animals, and all these incredible things. When we're living in harmony with everything Hashem has given to us, then that's where the riches actually came from. Because if those animals multiplied, then you were able to barter and trade animals for other things you needed, be it more vegetables or building your house or whatever it was. And we see communities who do this even today, like the Amish in America. So it's not that far out there. And people are just like, oh my gosh, no money. What do we do? What if we're cut off? Well, we didn't need money. We never needed money. We don't need anything that was created by the hand of man, because Hashem gave us everything. Hashem gave us food that grows right up from the earth. We talk about, I remember this book that the Chabad rabbis would read to my kids about the time of Moshiach. And they would be like, the pastries will grow right out of the ground and the trees will have gigantic fruit. And I'm sitting here like, do you understand that right now our food is growing right out of the ground? Like when you say it in the context of Moshiach, and like you have baklava growing out of the ground or whatever it is, croissant growing out of the ground, it's like, whoa. But it's only whoa because we've been so accustomed to seeing the wheat and the sweet apples and the tart lemons and the succulent berries. We're just so accustomed to seeing these incredible sweets and snacks and everything growing out of the ground. There's a book called Yuvi's Candy Tree. It's a story of an Ethiopian immigrant, if you've read it, to Israel. And she talks about how her grandmother, so here's the stories of the ancestors again, her grandmother would tell her that in Eretz Yisrael, there are candy trees where candies grow right off of the trees. And it makes me think of these Moshiach stories, and we all think of like, whoa, how could it be? Whoa, whoa. Look around you. Open up your eyes. When Yuvi got to Eretz Yisrael and drove through the first orange orchard, she knew that she had found her candy tree. Never in her life could she have imagined something so beautiful and sweet and fragrant. You can even eat the peels. You can eat the whole part of an orange, and it's got medicinal uses and it's got aromatherapy uses, and on and on and on. And yet she had her candy. She had only tasted a candy once before in her life, a sugary, sweet taste like that. And she had found her candy tree. And if we just step back, we've become so accustomed to so many things. If we can just step back for a minute and look at the natural world that we are ignoring in front of us. People are looking up the sky, and there's these clouds that seem to emanate, but only from the backs of planes. And they're in really long lines, and then they spread out. And we're told that they're clouds. And a bunch of people say, okay, because we haven't looked at the sky our whole lives. 30, 40, 50 years. When we were little kids, we used to have time to look at the sky. But now, ho, ho, the children don't have time to look at the sky anymore because they're in school and they're in front of screens and they're in classes and they're rushed around from place to place doing a million things. And they never lay on the grass for 5 hours and see what real clouds look like. And now we've got a discrepancy where people say, well, of course they're clouds. The government says they're clouds. And then you have other people who sat and watched the clouds and said, but clouds never came from the backs of planes before. They just floated around. And they looked really different. They looked like fluffy, or they looked like a dog or like a leprechaun. We would find shapes in them. They didn't look like these long straight lines. But the people who didn't look up at the sky and weren't connected to the natural earth don't see any danger. They don't see anything strange coming. And that's why we were given these ancestral practices to root us to the natural rhythms of the earth and of nature, so that when things are not as they should be, we can sense the danger and we can do something about it. So if there's nothing more to say, I think perhaps we should close because we've come up on our hour. We'll open it up to Q&A. Lil Aria, if you don't mind ending the recording. And I just wanted to thank everyone and remind everybody, ancientrootsisrael.com / I think it's Roots, Nettles, and Sage, but you can just look up Roots, Nettles, and Sage on that page and learn about Herbal First Aid 2, which begins in 2 days this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Israel time. And you can also just send an email to info@ancientrootsisrael.com. Let us know if you are paying in dollars or shekels. And we have a bunch of different options for you about how you can pay. They're all outlined on the website. So thank you.
So thank you very much again for a wonderful presentation to our chairwomen, Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin, Mrs. Chava Dagan, and Mrs. Gilla Weiss. And we thank our live studio audience from Paris, and I just found out afterwards, Alabama, for joining us, and to our viewers and listeners when this will be posted on Rumble. We look forward to seeing you in 4 weeks, which will be right before Rosh Hashanah, the Israelite New Year of 5784. Shalom from Jerusalem, from the Lower Galilee, from the Northern Negev, and from the Free State of Florida. Shalom. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I did it wrong.